All right, welcome to the deep dive. Today we're diving straight into something that's pretty critical for anyone who relies on cloud computing, keeping your business up and running smoothly no matter what.
Right.
Think about those scenarios.
Yeah.
A sudden spike in traffic, maybe something overloads your systems, or a power outage in a whole region, or even just like planned maintenance that you want to do without disrupting your users.
Right.
Making sure your apps stay available. That's huge.
Absolutely. And it's not just about avoiding like a little hiccup,
Right.
Downtime can really snowball, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you've got lost revenue, damage to your reputation.
Right. Yeah.
People might not trust you as much.
Right. Yeah.
Having a solid plan to keep things running,
Yeah.
that's super important these days, right? Everything's always on,
Yeah. Always on. Exactly.
digital world, right?
Exactly. And that's exactly what we're going to break down today.
Okay.
So you've shared some slides with me. Looks really interesting.
Cool.
Azure Site Recovery Ensuring Business Continuity,
All right.
put together by Manuel Seized.
Okay.
Our deep dive today, we're really focusing on understanding Azure Site Recovery,
Got it.
or ASR,
Okay.
and how it helps with high availability and disaster recovery.
Right. Makes sense.
So if you've ever thought about, like, how do I build a safety net for my apps in the cloud,
Yeah.
you're in the right place. Let's jump right in,
All right.
starting with slide 1, ensuring business continuity.
So this first slide really nails it.
Yeah.
Business continuity, it's not just a nice to have anymore.
Right.
It's like you need this, especially with cloud, right?
Do you need it?
And that's where Azure Site Recovery comes in, ASR.
Okay.
It's Microsoft's service, it's part of Azure,
Okay.
and it's built to make sure your business keeps running.
Okay, so ASR, that's a specific tool in Azure to deal with this.
Exactly.
The slide mentions it's all about replicating workloads
Right.
from a primary location to a secondary location. So when we say workloads, what does that actually mean for, someone listening? What are we talking about practically?
So think about the apps you absolutely need to keep running.
Yeah.
And all the stuff that makes them work. Your virtual machines, databases, web servers, all that.
Okay, so all those moving parts.
Yeah, all the moving parts that keep things going.
Yeah.
ASR basically makes a copy of all that and keeps it somewhere else.
Oh, okay.
So you have a backup ready to go if something happens to your main setup.
So it's not just like copying files, it's like copying a whole working system.
Exactly, the whole environment.
Okay. The slide also mentions failover, how ASR helps with that
Right.
for both high availability and disaster recovery.
Yeah, both important. Right.
We touched on it a bit, but could you break down how ASR actually helps with both of those? Like, what's the difference for someone using it?
Sure. High availability is all about preventing downtime
Okay.
within the same environment, right? Think of it like having backup parts ready. If one server goes down, another one jumps in,
Yeah.
people might not even notice. It's that smooth.
Okay, that makes sense.
Disaster recovery, though, that's for when a whole location goes down.
Oh,
It's like a major outage.
so a bigger problem.
Exactly.
Yeah.
ASR can do both, right? For high availability, it can quickly switch you to a standby system, maybe in the same region,
Okay,
but its real power is in disaster recovery.
got it.
It can move your whole operation to a different location,
Okay.
maybe hundreds of miles away if your primary site goes down.
So someone using it might see a small blip during a high availability event.
Right. Could be just a little blip. Yeah.
But for disaster recovery, it might take a bit longer to switch over.
It might take a bit longer. Yeah.
But it's still way faster than if you had nothing, right?
Way faster. Absolutely. You need that speed when disaster strikes.
Okay, that's a really helpful way to explain the difference.
Good. Glad it helps.
All right, let's move on to slide 2. Understanding Azure Site Recovery.
This slide gets to the core of what ASR is all about.
Okay.
It's about guaranteeing that your apps stay up and running
Yeah.
during both planned and unplanned outages.
Right.
It's those unexpected events that really throw a wrench in the works,
Oh, yeah, for sure. You can plan for maintenance, but you can't predict a network issue
Exactly.
or a crazy weather event taking out your data center.
You got it.
Right. The slide mentions ASR works with both physical and virtual machines.
Right.
That's pretty broad. So if I've still got some old physical servers,
Yeah.
could ASR still help with my disaster recovery plan?
Absolutely. And that's a big advantage of ASR.
Yeah.
It's not just for virtual machines in Azure.
Got it.
It can also protect those physical servers you have running on premises.
Okay.
So you can have a really comprehensive disaster recovery strategy.
Yeah.
One that covers all your important stuff, whether it's virtual in the cloud or still physical in your data center.
And where can you send all these replicated workloads?
Right. Good question.
The slide mentions a secondary Azure region. or even back to an on-premises data center.
That's right. You've got options.
So you could be replicating from your own servers to Azure,
Yeah.
from Azure to another Azure region,
Yep.
or even from Azure back to your own infrastructure.
Exactly. Lots of flexibility.
Wow, so many choices. What are some of the things people should think about when deciding where to send their replicated workloads?
So replicating to another Azure region, that's usually the simplest way. You're using Azure's global infrastructure.
Yeah.
Plus, it can give you better protection from regional problems,
Right.
especially if you pick a paired region, which we'll get to in a bit.
Okay, makes sense.
Now, replicating back to your own data center,
Yeah.
that might be necessary if you've got compliance rules,
Oh, right.
or if you have to keep data in a specific location, or maybe you just have extra space in your data center and you want to use it. That makes sense.
Cost is also a factor, of course.
Right. And how fast the connection is between your primary and secondary sites?
Yeah, latency, right?
Exactly. Latency can be a big deal.
Okay, so it's about picking what fits your needs and what you can afford.
Exactly. It's all about finding the right fit for you.
Makes sense.
Oh.
Okay, let's look at slide 3, Azure regions and failover.
So this slide is all about Azure's global reach.
Okay.
Azure regions, these are specific geographic areas all over the world.
Okay.
Each one has one or more data centers.
So like hubs for Azure services.
Yeah, think of them like hubs.
Okay.
They're designed to be separate from each other.
Okay.
So if one region has a problem, the other should be fine.
Got it. So they're isolated.
Exactly. Isolated for safety.
The slide mentions regional pairing.
Right.
So regions in the same geography are paired up
Yeah, they're paired up on purpose.
for disaster recovery.
Exactly.
What's the benefit of that pairing for, someone listening who's thinking about their disaster recovery strategy?
Regional pairing adds an extra layer of protection. These paired regions, they're far enough apart that they shouldn't both be affected by the same disaster,
Okay.
like a huge storm.
Right.
But they're still close enough that data replication isn't too slow.
So you get the best of both worlds.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Microsoft also makes sure updates and maintenance happen at different times in paired regions.
Well, that's smart.
Yeah, it reduces the chance of both regions being down at the same time.
That's a really good idea.
It's all about making your disaster recovery setup as reliable as possible.
That makes a lot of sense.
Good. Glad to hear it.
The slide then talks about the failover process,
Right.
switching to a standby server or network if the main one fails.
Yeah, the moment of truth.
That sounds like the critical moment when your disaster recovery plan gets put to the test.
Absolutely.
How does ASR handle that switch? What actually happens behind the scenes?
So when you need to fail over,
Yeah.
whether it's planned, like for maintenance, or unplanned because of an outage, ASR takes care of bringing your copied systems online in that secondary location.
Okay.
It turns on the virtual machines, sets up the network connection so everything can talk to each other.
So they're accessible.
Exactly.
Right, got it.
And it makes sure all that copy data is ready for your apps to use.
So it's not just about having the data copied. It's like having a ready-to-go environment already set up.
Exactly. It's prepped and waiting.
That's super important. So you're not scrambling to set everything up.
You don't want to be scrambling during an outage?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into the practical stuff.
Let's do it.
Slide 4. Setting up Azure Site Recovery.
All right, so this slide lays out the basics of getting ASR ready to protect your workloads.
Okay.
Step 1, create a recovery services vault.
Okay, a vault.
Yeah, think of it like a secure container.
Got it.
It sits inside your Azure subscription.
Okay.
And this is where you store all the info and settings for ASR.
So it's like the control center for disaster recovery.
Exactly, your disaster recovery HQ.
Okay, what's next after you create the vault?
Next, you configure the source and target.
Okay.
This is where you tell ASR exactly what you want to protect.
Okay.
It could be virtual machines in Azure, physical servers in your data center,
Right, we talked about that.
even virtual machines from other cloud providers.
Oh, wow.
And you also tell ASR where you want to replicate everything to.
So another Azure region or your own data center.
Exactly, just like we talked about before.
Makes sense. Define what needs protection and where the backup goes.
Yeah,
Step 3 is setting replication policies.
right.
What are the options there? What do people need to consider?
Replication policies, that's where you fine-tune how your data is copied and how quickly you can recover.
Okay.
It involves setting your recovery point objective, your RPO.
Okay.
that decides how much data you're okay with potentially losing if something bad happens.
Got it.
And then you decide how often data is copied, the replication frequency, and
Right.
how long you keep those recovery points.
Yeah. So those policies are about balancing data loss,
Yeah.
recovery speed,
Mhm.
and how much you're using your resources.
Exactly. Finding the right balance.
Okay.
And the final step on this slide, enabling replication.
That sounds like when the actual data protection starts
You
happening.
got it.
Okay.
Once you've created the vault, set up your source and target,
Yeah.
and configured your replication policies,
Okay.
enabling replication kicks off the process. It makes the initial copy of your chosen workloads and then keeps copying any changes to the secondary location, all based on the rules you set in your policies.
All right. That makes sense. We've got the initial setup covered.
Good. Now let's dive into the settings a bit more.
Yeah. Let's look at slide 5, replication policies and monitoring.
So this slide zooms in on those replication policies.
Okay.
It highlights the key things that determine how well you can recover. RPO, RTO, and how often replication happens.
Okay.
RPO and RTO, those are big concepts in disaster recovery planning.
Yeah. RPO and RTO.
Can you explain them in a way that makes sense for someone thinking about what an outage would actually mean for their business?
Okay. So RPO, recovery point objective,
Right.
that basically answers the question, how much data are you willing to potentially lose if a disaster strikes?
Exactly.
Like if your RPO is 15 minutes,
Yeah.
that means worst case scenario, you might lose up to 15 minutes worth of data.
Right, because that's how often your data is being copied.
Okay. And RTO, recovery time objective.
That one answers the question, how long can your apps be down before it really hurts your business?
Okay.
Like if your RCO is 1 hour,
Yeah.
that means your goal is to get everything back up and running in that secondary location within an hour of the outage.
So you're aiming to limit the downtime to 1 hour.
Exactly. Minimize that downtime as much as possible.
Okay, that makes sense. So these two things are super important for setting realistic expectations, right?
Absolutely.
Making sure your tech setup matches your business needs.
It's got to be aligned tech and business working together.
Yeah, for sure. The slide also mentions monitoring tools.
Right.
Azure gives you dashboards and alerts to track how well your replication is working.
Yeah, keeping an eye on things.
So why is it important to keep monitoring even after everything is set up?
Because setting up replication is only the first step. You
Right.
can't just set it and forget it.
Yeah.
You need to make sure it's actually working the way it should be.
Okay.
Azure's monitoring tools let you see the status of your replicated workloads.
Okay.
They'll flag any potential problems, like if replication is lagging behind or if there are errors.
So you can fix problems before they cause a real issue.
Exactly. It's like checking the batteries in your smoke detector.
Yeah.
You want to make sure it's working before you need it.
Right. You don't want to find out it's not working when there's a fire.
Exactly.
So it's about making sure your safety net is always in good shape.
Exactly. Always ready to catch you.
Okay. The slide mentions data consistency and timely corrective action.
Right. 2 key benefits of monitoring.
So that proactive element is really important.
Absolutely.
Now-
When you have consistent replication,
Yeah.
you know that if you need to fail over,
Right.
the data in your secondary location is as up to date as possible.
Okay. That makes sense.
And if you catch problems early through monitoring,
Yeah.
you can fix things like data syncing issues or network problems
Right.
before they turn into a big recovery headache.
So it's better to be safe than sorry.
Always better to be proactive.
Okay. That emphasizes the importance of staying on top of things.
For sure.
Let's move on to slide 6. Types of failover.
Okay, so this slide is all about how you can actually switch to that backup environment using ASR.
All right.
There are a few different ways to do it,
Okay.
each one designed for different situations.
Makes sense.
First up, we have test failover.
Okay. Test failover.
This is a great way to make sure your whole failover process actually works.
Okay.
The best part is it doesn't affect your live systems at all.
So you can run a disaster recovery drill without any risk.
Exactly. Practice makes perfect.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
What can someone learn from doing a test failover?
So you can check if your replication is working right.
Okay.
See if your apps come up properly in the secondary location.
Right.
And make sure your recovery procedures are solid.
Okay.
It's also a chance for your team to practice the whole failover process.
Got it.
Find any bottlenecks, smooth out any wrinkles.
Yeah, find those issues.
Exactly. Iron out the kinks
Okay.
and improve your documentation.
So everything is clear.
Crystal clear.
Okay.
And all of this without affecting your users.
That's a huge plus.
It's a great way to build confidence in your disaster recovery plan.
That makes sense. So you have test failover.
Right.
What's next?
Next, we've got Planned failover.
Okay, planned failover.
You do this during scheduled maintenance.
Right.
Since it's planned, you can do a final data sync before switching over.
Okay.
So you minimize the chance of losing data.
So this is ideal for when you know you need to take down your primary system for an upgrade or maintenance.
Exactly.
You still want to keep things running from the secondary location.
Exactly. It's a smooth, controlled transition.
Okay, got it.
And lastly, we have unplanned failover.
Okay, unplanned.
This is what you do when something unexpected happens and your primary environment goes down.
So the scenario you hope never happens.
Right. But you got to be ready for it.
Yeah, of course.
In these cases, depending on when the last replication happened, you might lose a bit of data.
Okay.
But the main goal is to get your critical services up and running in the secondary location as quickly as possible.
Okay.
To minimize that downtime.
So it's about damage control.
Yeah, containing the damage and getting back on track.
All right, so we've successfully failed over to our secondary environment.
We're up and running.
What's the process for getting back to the primary site once it's back online?
Good question. Let's look at slide 7, failback process.
Okay, failback.
This is all about smoothly transitioning back to your primary Azure region.
Okay.
Or your own data center, if that was your primary site, right?
Once it's all healthy and stable again.
Makes sense. So you're not going back to a system that's still having problems.
Exactly. No point in rushing back to an unstable environment.
What happens after the primary region is recovered?
So the first step is making sure your primary environment is actually fully operational.
Okay, so that's step 1, primary region recovery.
Right. Step 1.
Yeah.
Make sure everything is good to go.
Got it. What happens next?
Once the primary region is back online,
Yeah.
you need to copy any changes that happened in the secondary environment
Okay.
while the primary was down.
Right.
Back to that recovered primary location.
So syncing everything up.
Exactly, making sure everything is up to date.
Okay.
That's called reverse replication.
Reverse replication. Okay.
And after that, there's a synchronization phase.
Okay.
This makes absolutely sure that the primary region has all the latest data from the secondary.
So no data discrepancies after you switch back.
Exactly. Everything needs to be consistent.
Okay. And then the final step is switching back.
Yep, the final step. Moving everything back to the primary region.
That's right. Back to your main environment.
Okay, so the whole process goes full circle.
Full circle, back to where you started.
From primary to secondary and back again.
It's a journey, right?
Okay, let's talk about how to make this whole process work well.
Okay.
And what about the costs involved?
Yeah, cost is always a factor.
Slide 8. Best practices and cost considerations.
This slide has some great advice on getting the most out of ASR.
Okay.
And it breaks down the cost side of things, too.
All right, let's start with the best practices. What's the most important thing?
The #1 best practice is to regularly test your failover process.
We've talked about that.
We have. It's that important.
Testing, testing, testing.
Exactly. You got to make it a routine.
Okay.
It helps you spot any weaknesses in your plan.
Right.
And make sure your team knows what to do.
It's like a fire drill, but for your IT systems.
Exactly. Got to be prepared.
What other best practices are there?
You also need to keep your replication policies up to date. Your business needs change.
Yeah, for sure.
The importance of your apps can change.
Right.
The sensitivity of your data can change.
Okay.
You need to adjust your RPOs, RTOs, and replication frequency.
So they're still aligned with your current needs.
Precisely. Keep everything in sync.
Okay. What else?
We've talked about monitoring already.
Yeah. Keeping an eye on things.
That's an ongoing best practice.
Right.
Be proactive, catch those issues early,
Got it.
and finally, document your disaster recovery plan thoroughly.
Okay.
A good document makes sure everyone knows what to do during a failover or failback.
Right. It lays out all the roles and responsibilities.
Exactly. Minimizes confusion and delays.
So it's not a one-time setup. It's an active, evolving strategy.
Disaster recovery is a journey, not a destination.
Okay. I like that. Let's talk about the cost side of things.
All right. Let's get into the nitty-gritty of costs.
What are the main costs people should think about when using ASR?
There are a few key things.
Okay.
First, you've got the Recovery Services Vault costs. That covers the storage and management of the vault itself.
Right. The control center.
Exactly.
What else?
Then there's the cost of replicating data.
Okay. Ms. Nasis.
That includes the bandwidth used during the initial copy and the ongoing replication.
All right.
Plus, the storage costs for all that replicated data.
Right.
If you're replicating to another Azure region,
Yeah.
you might also have to pay for the virtual machines in that secondary region.
Okay.
Especially if you keep them running all the time.
So they're ready to go.
Exactly. Ready to take over if needed.
Okay.
And it's super important to optimize your policies to keep costs down.
Right.
Like, if you're replicating super often,
Yeah. Yeah.
You'll use more bandwidth and storage.
Yeah.
You've got to find the right balance between protection and budget.
So thinking strategically about RPOs and RTOs can really affect the costs.
Absolutely. Those decisions have real cost implications.
All right, we're nearing the end of our deep dive.
Time flies.
Let's look at slide 9. Real-world example and next steps.
Okay, so this slide shows how valuable ASR can be with a real-world success story.
Right.
It talks about company XYZ,
Oh.
a big e-commerce platform.
Okay, a big company.
They used ASR during a natural disaster.
Wow, so they really put it to the test.
They did, and it worked.
Okay.
It shows how important it is to have a solid disaster recovery plan.
Right, and that ASR can really deliver when you need it most.
Exactly. It's not just theory, it's real-world proven.
All right, so what are the next steps for someone who's thinking about implementing ASR?
So the first thing is to actually implement ASR in your own environment.
Okay, take the plunge.
Exactly. If you're using Azure and you haven't tried ASR yet,
Yeah.
now's the time to see how it can protect your workloads.
Okay, makes sense. What's the other key step?
The other key step is to test your failover process regularly.
We've said it a lot.
I know, but it's crucial.
Testing is so important.
It really is. You don't want to find problems when you're already in a disaster situation.
No, you want to be confident that it's going to work.
Exactly. Confidence is key.
All right, so that wraps up our deep dive into Azure Site Recovery
That was a good one.
based on this awesome presentation.
Van will see knows their stuff.
It's clear that ASR is a powerful tool for making sure your business keeps running smoothly in the cloud.
It really is.
It can replicate your important workloads
Keep those copies safe.
and seamlessly switch over to a secondary location.
Smooth transition.
If something happens,
Planned or unplanned, ASR has you covered.
we talked about setting it up.
Yeah, getting everything configured.
The importance of those replication policies
RPOs and RTOs, got to get those right.
and monitoring everything
Keep an eye on those dashboards.
and the different ways to fail over
Test, planned, unplanned. We covered them all.
and how to fail back.
Getting back to normal.
We also talked about best practices
Stay proactive, keep testing, document everything.
and those important cost considerations.
Budget wisely, find that balance.
Implementing ASR effectively is not just about turning on the tech.
It's bigger than that.
It's about understanding your needs,
Knowing your business,
configuring it carefully,
getting the settings right,
monitoring diligently,
stay vigilant.
and testing.
Practice makes perfect.
So, as you think about what would happen if your operations were disrupted
Food for thought.
and how a good disaster recovery solution like ASR could help,
Peace of mind.
what are some first steps you could take to evaluate or implement a system like this?
Lots to think about.
It's really important for anyone using the cloud.
Cloud resilience is key.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
My pleasure.